and look at the story problems. Did not do the back. I just thought because in the video and in class you only talked about the first part, that that's all I had to do. Unless I tell you, hey, only look at the first part, I am looking at you doing the whole thing. And the key thing is that I would need for you to show me that inverse operation. So looking at that now, are there any more from that huge massive list? And again, if you're having that many, you really need to start coming in the morning. You cannot put half the assignment up for questions. We gotta have less than that as we're going forward. So any other ones that you're like, I don't get what I should do after we looked at that answer key, okay? So today we will be handing in, but we are not handing in this one. We're going to hand in the one from the day before that we did. And I will get you scissors at the end of the period to cut that out, but right now I want you to go to your notes. Okay? So all this other stuff here, let's get rid of it. Okay? So, I need to test all right. So after looking at the test reflection, we're going to go into this one. So yesterday we did operations with addition, subtraction. We are now, our standard is working with solving multi-step. This time we are going to be using multiplication and division. So it says solve these equations using mental math. So just right now, you're going to put a number right below that you think X is, without showing any work. Like I think if I divide this by 2, I get 4. I take this number times 4, I get 20. I take this and divide it by 3, and I get 2. Please write those 3 numbers down right in your workbook, or right in your notes. You don't have your notes? Okay. So everyone should be putting this in your notes. What do you think those numbers are? Okay. So, something divided by 2 that equals 4 should give us, Nick, an answer of?
8.
8. 4 times what that gives us 20, Shanley, should give us? 5. What divided by 3 is equal to 2? We should be looking at, Jaden?
6.
6. Okay? Now, we did this just with mental math, just thinking about our numbers and what we know about our multiplication and division. The division property of equality that I'm going to ask you to show in your work, showing that inverse. Dividing each number of an equation by the same non-zero. Why can't we divide by 0? What was really important at the beginning of the year, Lucas?
Undefined.
Undefined. So if we take any number and you divide it by 0, remember this is undefined. So that's why in the definition, they give you that. They say, you cannot divide by a non-zero number, okay? So 3x equals 21. The inverse of multiplying by 3 is, this is how we're going to show our division with the line. And I know some of you really like to do this. You like putting this, divide 3. I want you to get in the habit, because if you look at the beginning of your workbook and you look at the end questions that we're getting to, they're going to get really complicated. And the next unit we get into is a lot more complicated. You want to be able to write these equations and show your work going down as we look at them, okay? Because when I look at the next unit, you get a really super ugly long equation that looks like this. And there is no way that when you look at this equation in our next unit, this says Unit D for pre-algebra, there is no way you can just do mental math and guess what the answer is, right? So it is really, really important that we get used to showing our process. So it says in algebra, if 2 things are equal, you can divide them on the same side. Now, one of the first things you have to make sure is, what is our coefficient of y? So when we look at this, what is the coefficient, so that vocabulary from the first unit, some of you kind of ignored it. The coefficient of y is what number as I take a look at this, Jack? Teal. What do I have? You're not Jack. Oh, you are Zach. Zach. Jack's over here. Zach, Jack, go. What's the coefficient of y in this equation? Jack, do you have it?
No.
Sanjay, do you have it? Negative 3.4. Now, it is important to identify that coefficient. And on the quiz we took Friday, some of you struggled with identifying. The coefficient just means the number times y. So, why do we need to identify that? Because now we're dividing by that coefficient. We're going to divide both sides by negative 3.4. On both sides, we're going to divide by negative 3.4. So if you don't have your calculator, you might want one. Take yours out. Y is equal. You what? You mentally solved it? I love it. And you said when you mentally solved it, what did you get?
5.
And so you're close to mentally solving. Because if he got 5, what's his mistake? Why? It should be negative, right?
It should be negative.
17, a positive divided by a negative, is it negative?
Negative 0.2941.
Wait, 17 divided by 3.4. Did you put the 17 in first? This means 17, right? When you read this, this means if I'm putting it in my calculator, 17 divided by negative 3 point. That's how I put it in my calculator, right? Whitney?
How do you know when to divide?
You divide by always what the coefficient of the variable is. So you have to identify the coefficient. Did you get negative 5?
Yes, I did. I did get negative 5.
You did get negative 5, yes. If you're getting syntax error, you are probably putting in a minus instead of a negative. So there's a huge difference when you put this in your calculator of using that plus minus button or using the minus button in a parenthesis. So you need to make sure you know how to use your calculator. Okay, all right. So good questions about what do we know we should divide by. So if you are doing this one, I need the inverse. So, turning to the next page, this means 3 times x. Micah, Harwood, the inverse of multiplying by 3 would be? What would 3?
Oh, 3 divided by...
We're going to divide, and we're going to show it like this, divide both sides by 3. The first one, oh, how nice, right? No fraction, no decimal, x is equal to 9 divided by 3 gives us 3. Does that check? Is 3 times 3 9? Yeah. Okay. Taking a look at the next one as I look at that. I'm going to have you put your calculator down, Nick. We don't need it for this part, okay? Abby, if we are taking a look at number 2, we have it. So set it down. And just you're going to write with me in your notes. You have your notes out?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I have negative 7 times x, what do we need to do, Abby? We're going to divide both sides. My coefficient is negative 7. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 7. Emma, I'm going to get x is equal to? Do it right below the problem. Keep the x with it. Okay? So 9. What'd you end up with, Emma, if we take 42 and divide it by negative 7? Negative 6. Does it make sense if I take negative times a negative? If I was thinking of the check of this, if I take negative 7 times negative 6, does it equal 42? Yes. So we look at this next one. Maria, what's my coefficient of x at number 3?
4.
4. That means I need to divide on both sides. Lucas, by 2 or 4?
4.
4. Make sure you're showing that division by 4. Okay. The easiest thing, people sometimes don't like to get fractional answers. So they think this problem should be looking at x being 1/2. They want to put 2. Because they just want to divide both sides by 2 because they like integers instead of fractions. Yes, those are easier numbers maybe to work with. You can have 0.5 or 1/2. I take either answer. And if you think of that, if you take half of 4, does it equal 2? Yeah. So we're looking at this one. Oh, division by 2, right? This looks kind of ugly. We want to do something a little differently with this problem. We are going to write it like this. It's 2 times x. Now, if I'm dividing by 2, I don't know if you guys remember from last year, but division by 2 is actually the same as multiplying by what number? multiply by its reciprocal. So we're going to put 2 times x, and it is the same. Dividing by 2 is exactly the same as multiplying by a half. So we're going to put a half out in front here, equals 1/8, and we're going to put times a half here. Now what's nice about this side is that 2 over 2 cancels, right? And we're left with x equals. And here we can't simplify, but 1 times 1 gives us 1 over 16. And if I was checking this, and you're thinking, I don't think I did that right, that can't be right, and you do a check, and you go back to the original, and you put in 2 times 1/16. 2 goes in here, this would be an 8. Do I get 1/8? Yeah, it works. So the key thing is identify that coefficient. And when I hand back your quiz from Friday, that is one of the things that I'm really looking at, that some of you really didn't study your vocabulary from that first unit. Again, flashcards are very important. If you go to Quizlet and you put some of those words in, you need to study. You need to know terms, coefficients, like terms. You need to make sure you're understanding. So besides the division problem, we also have the multiplication problem. So the multiplication problem says that we can multiply by the same non-zero number on both sides, and we will have equivalent equations. So these 2 equations are exactly equivalent. This one here, where we have x divided by 4 equals 6, and if we multiply both sides by 4, they are called equivalent equations. They're really the same. So when we look at this equation, t divided by 8 equals 6, the opposite of dividing by 8 is to multiply. Please write this side times 8 over 1, but on this side we're just going to do 8. Okay? Again, you have to identify where your variable is and do the inverse operation. These 2 8s, that's the same as 1 over 1. So t is equal to 48. Does it make sense if you think in your head 48 divided by 8, does it equal 6? Okay? So, we're going to go to the top, that next page of your notes, and we're going to be filling in. As I look at this, please go down to 1 step and let's show what you're doing for our work. So we're going to write the same problem right below it. And the opposite of dividing by 9, Elena, is to do what? Multiply by 9. On this side, I'm going to put it as 9 over 1. Here, we're just going to put 9. When I do that multiplication, then I'm going to end up with x equals?
X equals
27. And if you think about that, does it make sense if you would think about the check? 27 divided by 9, that equals 3. Okay? All right. Jacob, we're looking at that next one. What should I be multiplying by on both sides of my equation? 2.5. So we're going to put in 2.5. And again, if you need your calculator to take 5 times 2.5, or if you're just thinking of $2.50 and you have 5 of them, how much money do you have? That might help you. Sometimes thinking of it in terms of something that you recognize. How much are we ending up with? 5 times 2.5. We should have an answer of 12.5. $12.50, 12.5, right? And if you divide that by 2.5 on your calculator, you should get 5. All right, so then we get these ugly fraction ones and people just go, oh, this is not right, this doesn't make sense. So, Ellen, as we look at this first one, what do we want to multiply by on both sides to get rid of that negative 12? What's opposite of dividing by negative 12? We're going to multiply, and not just by 12, but by the same sign. So we want to make sure we're putting negative 12 here. Okay? So we're going to put negative 12 over 1, and we're going to put negative 12 over 1 here. So as we look at that, Emma, my negative 12s cancel. Negative divided by negative leaves us with a positive r. What am I going to be left with on this side? Do you want to multiply them first, or do you want to try and simplify? Because you can do it either way. You can simplify this, or you can multiply top times top and then bottom times bottom, either way. What do you want to do? Choices. Multiply. So you're going to have negative times negative. Negative 1 times negative 12 gives us 12 over 2. But this is where someone will say, but Mrs. Thompson, that's not in simplest form and correct. I would mark that wrong. What do I need to do? I need to divide on both sides. And we're going to divide on both sides. 12 divided by 2, r gives us 6. So this one, does that make sense? That if we take 6 divided by negative 12, does that actually equal a negative 1/2? Yeah, that makes sense, right? Whitney.
So why did you put a negative 12 above it? Above when you were multiplying?
Because if I wanted, this is division, so multiplying by negative 12 is the same as negative 12 divided by 1, right? So anytime I write a number, I can always put it over 1. Every number can be written that way, okay? All right. Micah Herbal, tell us in the next one, what are we looking at doing? Nice, negative 3 over 1, and over here by negative 3 over 1. I'm going to keep it over 1 because I have fractions, right? Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is just 1, so I have C left. And this side, I can't simplify 3 and 7, so I'm multiplying, and I get negative 12 over 7.
And we simplify that to 1 negative. Like,
so could you write it as a mixed number? That's not simplifying, it's just rewriting it in another form.
Writing it as like negative 1 over, negative 1 and 5, 7.
I would not mark that wrong. Could you leave it like this? Some of you will make a mistake going from here to here. So can you leave it just as negative 12/7? Yes. Okay. If you like writing it as a mixed number, by all means, you can change it. Just make sure you do this correctly as you're doing it. Okay. All right. So we have some practice ones. As you are looking at these practice, it's kind of a mix of the two. Okay. I would like you to try these right now, and I'm going to have you come up to the board, and we're going to put them up. Okay. In just a minute. So show your work. And when you do it, I'm going to have you do your first step up here. We'll show it kind of as we're doing our problems. Put it down. And then we'll put them up here so you guys can come up and write.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I know. Not too many people were looking though, so that's good.
I didn't even notice they were up there until you were moving the boxes.
So they all look like, when I was looking at like the worksheet, these all look like minuses, like an expression that isn't equal. Okay? So those are all equals.
And C for number 15.
And D.
Good. So put equal signs in those if you would, okay? So I don't know why it just didn't copy right to show that. As you look at this worksheet, there is only, we're looking at the front is 1 to 18. And as you look at the back, oh my gosh, didn't that look ugly?
Look at the back too. No. Oh dear.
Yeah, it is.
Maddie, have a message. So, what I want you to do for tomorrow, I want the front page done, 1 through 18, okay? On the back,